Kings, Farmers, and Towns Chapter Notes, NCERT Textbooks, Class 6 to Class 12, UPSC PDF download. Several developments happened in different parts of the subcontinent, India, in the long span of 1,500 years following the end of the Harappan civilization. These are covered in the chapter Kings, Farmers and Towns. Let's discuss them with the help of chapter notes. 1. Prinsep and Piyadasi. In the 1830s, James Prinsep, an officer in the Mint of the East India Company, deciphered Brahmi and Kharosthi, two scripts used in the earliest inscriptions and coins. Lithograph by Prinsep. He found that most of these mentioned a king referred to as Piyadasi, meaning pleasant to behold. There were a few inscriptions that also referred to the king as Asoka, one of the most famous rulers known from Buddhist texts. 2. The earliest states. The 16 Mahajanapadas. The 6th century BCE is an era associated with early states, cities, the growing use of iron, the development of coinage, etc. Early Buddhist and Jaina texts mention, amongst other things, 16 states known as Mahajanapadas. Although the lists vary, some names such as Vijji, Magadha, Koshala, Kuru, Panchala, Gandhara, and Avanti occur frequently. Clearly, these were amongst the most important Mahajanapadas. While most Mahajanapadas were ruled by kings, some, known as Ganas or Sanghas, were oligarchies where power was shared by a number of men, often collectively called Rajas. Each Mahajanapada had a capital city, which was often fortified. From c. 6th century BCE onwards, Brahmanas began composing Sanskrit texts known as the Dharmasutras. These laid down norms for rulers, as well as for other social categories, who were ideally expected to be Kshatriyas. Some states acquired standing armies and maintained regular bureaucracies. Others continued to depend on militia, recruited, more often than not, from the peasantry. First amongst the 16. Magadha. Between the 6th and the 4th centuries BCE, Magadha, in present-day Bihar, became the most powerful Mahajanapada. It was a region where agriculture was especially productive. Besides, it was also rich in natural resources and animals like elephant, which was an important part of the army, could be procured from the forest spreads of the region. Ganga and its tributaries provided a means of cheap and convenient communication. Magadha attributed its power to the policies of individuals, ruthlessly ambitious kings of whom Bimbisara, Ajatasattu and Mahapadmananda are the best known, and their ministers, who helped implement their policies. Rajagaha, the Prakrit name for present-day Rajgir in Bihar, was the capital of Magadha initially. In the 4th century BCE, the capital was shifted to Pataliputra, present-day Patna. 3. An early empire. The growth of Magadha culminated in the emergence of the Mauryan Empire. Chandragupta Maurya, who founded the empire, circa 321 BCE, extended control as far northwest as Afghanistan and Baluchistan, and his grandson Asoka, arguably the most famous ruler of early India, conquered Kalinga, present-day coastal Orissa. The Lion Capital. Sources of Mauryan Empire. Account of Megasthenes, a Greek ambassador to the court of Chandragupta Maurya, called Indica, Arthashastra probably composed by Kautilya or Chanakya, the minister of Chandragupta, later Buddhist, Jaina and Puranic literature. Besides, the inscriptions of Asoka, circa 272–268–231 BCE, on rocks and pillars are often regarded as amongst the most valuable sources. Dhamma. Ashoka used the inscriptions to proclaim what he understood to be Dhamma, which included respect towards elders, generosity towards Brahmanas and those who renounced worldly life, treating slaves and servants kindly, and respect for religions and traditions other than one's own. According to him, this would ensure the well-being of people in this world. Special officers known as Dhamma Mahamitta were appointed to spread the message of Dhamma. Administering centers. There were 5 major political centers in the empire, the capital Pataliputra and the provincial centers of Taxila, Ujjaini, Tosali and Swarnagiri. It is likely that administrative control was strongest in areas around the capital and the provincial centers. These were wisely chosen as both Taxila and Ujjaini being situated on important long-distance trade routes, while Swarnagiri, literally, the Golden Mountain, was possibly important for tapping the gold mines of Karnataka. Communication along both land and riverine routes was vital for the existence of the empire. Megasthenes mentions a committee with 6 subcommittees for coordinating military activity. In the 19th century, the emergence of the Mauryan Empire was regarded as a major landmark, as India was under colonial rule during that time. Some of the archaeological finds associated with the Mauryas, including stone sculpture, were considered to be examples of the spectacular art typical of empire. Nationalist leaders in the 20th century regarded Ashoka as an inspiring figure, as the inscriptions suggested that was more powerful and industrious, as also more humble than later rulers who adopted grandiose titles. 4. New notions of kingship. By the 2nd century BCE, new chiefdoms and kingdoms emerged in several parts of the subcontinent. This development was mainly seen in the Deccan and further south, including the chiefdoms of the Cholas, Cheras, and Pandyas in Tamilikam, the name of the ancient Tamil country, which included parts of present-day Andhra Pradesh and Kerala, in addition to Tamil Nadu, proved to be stable and prosperous. Many chiefs and kings, including the Satavahanas who ruled over parts of western and central India, c. 2nd century BCE 2nd century CE, and the Sakas, a people of Central Asian origin who established kingdoms in the northwestern and western parts of the subcontinent, derived revenues from long-distance trade. A Kushana coin. Divine kings, one means of claiming high status was to identify with a variety of deities. The Kushanas, c. 1st century BCE 1st century CE, who ruled over a vast kingdom extending from Central Asia to northwest India, followed this strategy. They adopted the title Devaputra, or son of God, installed colossal statues in shrines. By the 4th century, there is evidence of larger states, including the Gupta Empire. These states depended on Samantas, men who maintained themselves through local resources including control over land. The Prayaga Prashasti, also known as the Allahabad Pillar inscription, composed in Sanskrit by Harishina, the court poet of Samudragupta, arguably the most powerful of the Gupta rulers, c. 4th century CE. 5. A changing countryside. Popular perception. Anthologies such as the Jataks and the Panchtantra gave a glimpse of subject-king relation. For instance, one story known as the Gandatindu Jatak describes the plight of the subjects of a wicked king. Kings frequently tried to fill their coffers by demanding high taxes, and peasants particularly found such demands oppressive. Certain strategies aimed at increasing production to meet the growing demand for taxes also were adopted. For example, the shift to plough agriculture, which spread in fertile alluvial river valleys such as those of the Ganga and the Kaveri from c. 6th century BCE. Also, production of paddy was dramatically increased by the introduction of transplantation. Another strategy adopted to increase agricultural production was the use of irrigation, through wells and tanks, and less commonly, canals. The benefits of increased production led to a growing differentiation amongst people engaged in agriculture, as it was not equally distributed. The stories of Buddhist tradition refer to the term, Gahapati, which was often used in Pali texts to designate the second and third categories. Tamil literature mentions large landowners or Vellalar, ploughmen or Uzavar, and slaves or Adimai. With rising differences, questions of control over land must have become crucial, as these were often discussed in legal texts. During early centuries of the Common Era, grants of land were made, and many of which were recorded in inscriptions. For instance, according to Sanskrit legal texts, women were not supposed to have independent access to resources such as land. Land grants provide some insight into the relationship between cultivators and the state. 6. Towns and trade. Major towns were located along routes of communication. Some such as Pataliputra were on riverine routes. Some were near the coast, from where sea routes began. Many cities like Mathura were bustling centers of commercial, cultural, and political activities. A wide range of artifacts have been recovered from the excavations in these areas. These include fine pottery bowls and dishes, with a glossy finish, known as northern black polished ware, probably used by rich people, and ornaments, tools, weapons, vessels, figurines, made of a wide range of materials: gold, silver, copper, bronze, ivory, glass, shell and terracotta. The gift of an image. By the 2nd century BCE, we find short votive inscriptions in a number of cities. Sometimes, guilds or shrenis, organizations of craft producers and merchants, are mentioned as well. From the 6th century BCE, land and river routes crisscrossed the subcontinent and extended in various directions. Rulers often attempted to control the routes, possibly by offering protection for a price. Those who traversed these routes included peddlers who probably traveled on foot and merchants who traveled with caravans of bullock carts and pack animals. Spices, especially pepper, were in high demand in the Roman Empire, as were textiles and medicinal plants, and these were all transported across the Arabian Sea to the Mediterranean. Exchanges were facilitated by the introduction of coinage. Punch-marked coins made of silver and copper, c. 6th century BCE onwards, were amongst the earliest to be minted and used. Attempts were made to identify the symbols on punch-marked coins with specific ruling dynasties. The first coins to bear the names and images of rulers were issued by the Indo-Greeks, who established control over the northwestern part of the subcontinent c. 2nd century BCE. The first gold coins were issued c. 1st century CE by the Kushanas. The widespread use of gold coins indicates the enormous value of the transactions that were taking place. Some of the most spectacular gold coins were issued by the Gupta rulers. From c. 6th century CE onwards, finds of gold coins taper off. Coins were also issued by tribal republics such as that of the Yadhayas of Punjab and Haryana, c. 1st century CE. Hoards of Roman coins have been found from archaeological sites in South India. It is obvious that networks of trade were not confined within political boundaries. South India was not part of the Roman Empire, but there were close connections through trade. 7. How are inscriptions deciphered? Brahmi. Most scripts used to write modern Indian languages are derived from Brahmi, the script used in most Asokan inscriptions. It was only after decades of painstaking investigations by several epigraphists that James Prinsep was able to decipher Asokan Brahmi in 1838. Kharosti. Kharosti is the script used in inscriptions in the northwest. The coins of Indo-Greek kings, who ruled over the area, c. 2nd–1st centuries BCE, contain the names of kings written in Greek and Kharosti scripts. European scholars who could read the former compared the letters. With Prinsep identifying the language of the Kharosti inscriptions as Prakrit, it became possible to read longer inscriptions as well. Kharosti. Epigraphists and historians, after examining all these inscriptions, and finding that they match in terms of content, style, language, and paleography, come to a conclusion. Historians have to constantly assess statements made in inscriptions to judge whether they are true, plausible, or exaggerations. 8. The limitations of inscriptional evidence. However, it is probably evident that there are limits to what epigraphy can reveal. Sometimes, there are technical limitations, or inscriptions may be damaged or letters missing. Besides, it is not always easy to be sure about the exact meaning of the words used in inscriptions. Although several thousand inscriptions have been discovered, not all have been deciphered, published, and translated. Thus, epigraphy alone does not provide a full understanding of political and economic history. Also, historians often question both old and new evidence. Timeline to remember. 600 to 500 BCE, emergence of Mahajanapadas. 544 to 492 BCE, reign of Bimbisara. 492 to 460 BCE, tenure of Ajatasattu. 269 to 231 BCE, reign of Ashoka. 201 BCE, Kalinga war was fought. 335 to 375 BCE, reign of Samudragupta. 375 to 415 CE, reign of Chandragupta II. 1784 Asiatic Society, Bengal, was founded. 1810 Colin Mackenzie collects over 8,000 inscriptions in Sanskrit and Dravidian languages. 1838 Brahmi script, James Prinsep deciphered. 1877 Alexander Cunningham published a set of Asokan inscriptions. 1886 First issue of Epigraphia Kamatika, Journal of South Indian Inscriptions. 1888 First issue of Epigraphia Indica. 1965–66 DC Sarkar published Indian Epigraphy and Indian Epigraphical Glossary. Key concepts in nutshell. Several developments in different parts of the subcontinent, India, the long span of 1,500 years following the end of Harappan civilization. Rigveda was composed along the Indus and its tributaries. Agricultural settlements emerged in several parts of the subcontinent. A new mode of disposal of the dead, like making megaliths. By c. 600 BCE, growth of new cities and kingdoms. 600 BCE, major turning point in early Indian history. Growth of 16 Mahajanapadas. Many were ruled by kings. Some known as Gyanas or Sanghas were oligarchies. Between 600 BCE and 400 BCE, Magadha became the most powerful Mahajanapada. The emergence of Mauryan Empire. Chandragupta Maurya, c. 321 BCE, founder of the empire, extended control up to Afghanistan and Baluchistan. His grandson Ashoka, the most famous ruler, conquered Kalinga. Variety of sources to reconstruct the history of the Mauryan Empire. Archaeological finds, especially sculpture, Ashoka's inscriptions, literary sources like Indic account of Megasthenes, Arthashastra of Kautilya, and Buddhist, Jaina and Puranic literature. 5 major political centers, Pataliputra, Taxila, Ujjayani, Tosili, and Swarnagiri to administer the empire. Ashoka's Dhamma to hold his empire together. Some solved questions. Very short answer questions, 2 marks. Q. 1. What are megaliths? Ans. A. Megaliths were elaborate stone structures in central and south India in 1st millennium BCE. B. These were kept on the burials. Dead were buried with a wide range of iron tools and weapons. Q. 2. Why was 6th century BCE often considered as a major turning point in Indian history? Ans. A. It is an era associated with early states and cities, growing use of iron, the development of coin. B. It also witnessed the growth of a diverse system of thoughts including Buddhism and Jainism. Q. 3. Define Dhamma Mahamita. Ans. A. Special officers appointed by Ashoka. B. Appointed to spread the message of Dhamma. Q. 4. Write any 2 sources of Mauryan history. Ans. A. Arthashastra of Kautilya. B. Ashoka's inscriptions. Q. 5. Who were Kushanas? Ans. A. Kushanas were a clan of nomadic people living in China. B. Kushanas ruled over a vast kingdom extending from Central Asia to northwest India. C. First to issue gold coins in India. Q. 6. In which languages and script, Ashokan script, were written? Ans. A. Language Prakrit, Aramaic, and Greek. B. Script Prakrit in Brahmi, Greek, Aramaic, and Kharosti. Q. 7. Who was a Gahapati? Ans. 1. Gahapati was the owner, master or head of a household. 2. He was the owner of the resources, land, animals and other things that belonged to the household. Short answer questions, 5 marks. Q. 8. Discuss factors responsible for the rise of Magadha. Ans. Powerful rulers Bimbisara and Ajatsattu. Availability of iron. Fertile soil. Availability of elephants in the forest. Strong capital, Rajgir and Pataliputra. Q. 9. Describe 5 features of Mahajanapadas. Ans. Maximum Mahajanapadas were ruled by kings, but some ruled by Gyanas or Sanghas. Each had its own capital, often fortified. The permanent army was recruited from the peasantry's regular bureaucracies. Dharmasutras laid down norms for kings and other people. The function of king is to collect taxes and tributes from people. Q. 10. Explain main features of Ashoka's Dhamma. Ans. Respect to elders, love for yam, and kindness to servants. Religious tolerance to other religions. Liberal policies towards Brahmanas, Shramanas. Appointment of Dhamma Mahamatas. Q. 11. Important changes in agriculture during the period between 600 BCE to 600 CE. Ans. For increase of agricultural production, use of plough with iron-tipped ploughshare. Introduction of transplantation of crop, paddy. Irrigation by wells, ponds, and canals. Ho agriculture in semi-arid parts of Punjab, Rajasthan and hilly tracts in northeastern and central parts. Landlords and heads of villages were more powerful and had control over farmers. Land grants by kings to extend agriculture to new areas. Q. 12. How does inscriptions help in the reconstruction of history? Ans. Knowledge about the rulers and their achievements. Scripts and language of that time. Land grant and economic condition. The extent of the empire. The social and religious condition of kingdom. Q. 13. Main features of Mauryan administration. Ans. Central administration. King had control over legislative, executive, judiciary, army and finance. Provincial administration. The empire was divided into many provinces. Local government. There was a committee of 30 members to maintain rules and regulations in Pataliputra. King used to run the administration with the help of high officials. 5 major political centers in the empire. Law and order system set up. Organized army. A committee with 6 subcommittee for coordinating military activity. To spread Dhamma, appointment of Dhamma Mahamitra. Officers were appointed to manage the land revenue, irrigation and roads. Institution of spies was very strong and working effectively. Q. 14. Source-based questions. Read the following passage and answer the questions given below. What did the king's officials do? Here is an excerpt from the account of Megasthenes. Of the great officers of state, some superintend the rivers, measure the land, as is done in Egypt, and inspect the sluices by which water is let out from the main canals into their branches, so that everyone may have an equal supply of it. The same persons have charge also of the huntsmen, and are entrusted with the power of rewarding or punishing them according to their deserts. They collect the taxes, and superintend the occupations connected with land, as those of the woodcutters, the carpenters, the blacksmiths, and the miners. Q. 1. Explain the duties of the officers of state. Ans. 1. Some superintended the rivers, measured lands and inspected the sluices by which water was let out from the main canals into their branches, so that everyone would have an equal supply of it. 2. They had also charge of huntsmen, entrusted with the power of rewarding or punishing them according to their deserts. 3. They collected the taxes, and superintended the occupations connected with land, as those of the woodcutters, the carpenters, the blacksmiths, and the miners. Q2. Explain the role of the subcommittees for coordinating military activities. Ans. 1. Megasthenes mentioned the committee with 6 subcommittees for coordinating military activity. 2. They looked after navy, transport, and provisions, foot soldiers, horses, chariots, and elephants. 3. The second committee had to arrange bullock carts to carry equipment, procure food for soldiers and fodder for animals, and recruit servants and artisans to look after the soldiers. Q3. What did Ashoka do to hold his empire together? 2. Ans. 1. Ashoka tried to hold his empire together by propagating Dhamma. 2. Special officers called Dhamma Mahamittas were appointed to spread the message of Dhamma.